Joel Embiid's the MVP front runner. If he didn't get hurt, I think he'd be a lock for MVP. So now he's really competing with two other guys. But I really like this when you brought this up, Choder, as a conversation topic for this pod of what do you guys think is the big difference in Joel Embiid's game, like from Brett Brown to from Brett Brown to Doc Rivers, excuse me. Like, what do you think they're doing different with Joel?
Let me go first.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I think they're just putting better pieces around him, and I think it's just more consistency. Uh, from like a lot of obviously I haven't caught too many 76ers games. I'm gonna sit here and act like I know their game plan, but like from like former Sixers and like I've seen Joel Embiid talk about this in interviews. Like there's just always turnover. Like there was just always new team members. So I think and then just surrounding him with shooters like Seth Curry and things like that, and Ben Simmons obviously helps. But I think just overall, just the system that Doc Rivers brings to like any team, the way he like kind of utilizes his shooters to come off like work off big men and things like that. Um, I think it helps Joel Embiid out a lot to have that talent around him and those guys that are capable to knock down that shot. It really does a lot. That spacing, just give him that amount to work instead of he was playing last year playing against Al Horford or playing with Al Horford. It's just like it's all clogged up in there. It's not as easy for him to work. So I think that's the biggest difference for sure.
I think that it just kind of speaks to how badly the Sixers got not necessarily lucky because they were tanking with the process to get people like to get high draft picks and that's how they ended up getting Embiid and Simmons. But I think since they've got them, they've done a horrible job of like managing the team. They just got there off of sheer talent. But with those two players, they could have gotten so much farther, I think, already. Even though were one shot away from the conference finals 1 year.
Yeah.
And they could have possibly even won the whole finals that year because they lost by that one shot to the champion. But the things that they've done this season are make small tweaks that like everybody kind of knew what was wrong. Like first they got a new GM because their previous GM hated shooters. He just didn't want shooters on his team. He traded away Mikal Bridges. You know how much I hated that move.
Yeah, for Zaire Smith.
He was already in Philly. Like he was a Philly kid. He went to Nova and they traded him away. But I really thought he fit the team because he was a 3-and-D guy. You see he's doing that with Phoenix. And he's a good fit. He would have been perfect for the Sixers. And then they even traded away Saric and Covington for Jimmy Butler. Now, even though that did kind of work, one of their hindrances that year was they weren't a good shooting team. And even like the past few years, they just don't like getting shooters. Like you said, they got Zaire Smith. He's not a shooter. Even Markel Fultz, they ruined his shot. Like they just don't want shooting on their team. So they got Daryl Morey, and he's like, why don't we have shooters? You know, he came from Houston where that's all they had was small guys that could shoot. So he got Seth Curry, and he got Danny Green. And now look, that gives Ben Simmons more targets to pass to, and that spreads the floor more. And now Joel Embiid's three-point percentage has even gone up. And he's not taking a lot, but he's shooting close to 40%, if not 40% from three. So he's another guy who can knock down three-pointers consistently. That's spreading the floor. And then Doc Rivers finally decided, let's actually let him go in the post and score in the post consistently. And now he's averaging 30. Like these are things they should have been doing. But I'm glad they're doing it now because now they're actually a good team that can actually compete. Because even though they were solid before, I feel like it was just talent that kind of got them as far as they did rather than like being a good cohesive team. And now they're talented and a good cohesive team. And even though he's hurt, I think Embiid's hurt. I think they still have a good chance, and they probably won't win just because the Nets are stacked now and then still got LeBron and AD in the West, but they're still young players. So I think you can build with those guys. And we see you don't need crazy talented or expensive players around them. I mean, I do want to shout out Tobias Harris because he's a big piece. Yeah. But like besides him, they just have like shooters and solid guys coming off the bench. And Simmons and Embiid can kind of do the rest.
Go ahead, Ben.
That was a month.
Yeah, something I definitely wanted to touch on was Marlon's point on the 3-point shooting. He's shooting like 9% better. He's shooting like 42%, which is up there with like Curry and Levine, like the top 3-point shooters in the
Which
league.
is another funny thing about
To do that as a big man was like unheard of. But yeah, I also kind of agree with. I think Doc Rivers is just like, I think their game plan is just go to him initially, get him going. Another stat I'm looking at is he averages like 3 more free throw attempts. And he's shooting actually less threes per game, but he's making them at such a higher percentage than last year. So I think that's just the biggest thing. He's just being more aggressive. I don't know. I think their game plan has changed a lot. Obviously, Jimmy took some touches away from him in the past. He was kind of banged up last year. I think he is almost like every year, unfortunately. But yeah, that's about all I have. I think the game plan for the Sixers is just go to him initially and not really worry about everyone else until he gets going. Because I think once he gets going, he can't, like, there's no one in the league that can stop him. Like, he's probably the most dominant, definitely the most dominant big man. I guess AD could be up there, but I don't see anyone stopping Embiid, not even AD.
Yeah. I'll kind of jump off of everything. Something all you guys said was just the difference between Doc and Brett. One thing is when Marlon brought up how the coach was when, the GM, excuse me, Jerry Colangelo, when he brought in Jimmy in that trade for Covington and Saric, it lowered your shooting, but I'm making that trade 100 times out of 100 to get Jimmy Butler. That team should have been in the Eastern Conference Finals. I'll go down to the grave. That wasn't that was one of the clutchest shots I've ever seen by Kawhi, but that's one of the luckiest shots I've ever seen. It bounced 4 times. There were 4 bounces away from making it to the Eastern Conference Finals. They should have. Jimmy Butler, that you make that trade 100 times out of 100. But you need shooting, of course, when you have someone like Simmons who doesn't shoot. And then you have Embiid, where Doc's actually come in, and I read a couple articles about how Doc is letting Embiid play his game now, where that was something Brett wouldn't exactly do, where Doc's like, you know what, go down low, go up top, go where you want to go. But you know how one thing Brett would do a lot, if you watch Sixers games, he would end up stopping what was working. Say Embiid's dominating the big man down low, then he would make Embiid go back up top, which makes no sense. So now you have Doc where he's like, all right, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Stay down low, feed the post, dominate the big. And that's what they're doing now with Embiid. And obviously it's taken this, it hasn't taken long. Embiid's been dominant for many years, but now he's at his prime, where you could argue I don't want to go since that long. Maybe since Duncan, this is the most dominant big in the game, at least down low in the post. I was going to say Shaq, but I didn't want to throw no shade on Tim. You're muted, Marlon.
I was going to say you could say that because we did have like a dry area in between Duncan and, because like the early 2000s, we didn't really have that many good bigs. But I do think AD was really dominant. But one thing I wanted to say about Brett Brown, not allowing him to go in the post and stuff, I don't even think it was necessarily like him being a tyrant and just making all the decisions. I feel like some of it was Embiid not being in shape, and like late in games, he'd kind of get lethargic. And so I feel like Embiid had a lot to do with not always just being dominant like he could be and just going after it every game. But you did see that in the playoffs, though. So I think he kind of just was doing some like in-game load management type stuff, like you would see LeBron do kind of, but it's different with a big man in the post. So I don't think it was necessarily just Brett Brown, but I think Doc Rivers just is like, if you can't do this the whole game, then why are you playing at all?
Mm-hmm.
So I think part of it is Embiid being in better shape now.
One thing that I also read as well was about how one thing Doc Rivers has really emphasized towards Embiid is to just stay aggressive. Because, as you mentioned, he would kind of like load manage during games or just take some plays off. But that's one thing that Doc Rivers has really just emphasized: just be aggressive, play your game. Like he's probably told himself many times, like, "Yo, you're the best big in the NBA. Go be the best big.
Right.
Don't change your game for anybody." And he's just roaming the floor now. He's not sitting in one spot because Embiid, I don't want to put this much like hype on him. I know it sounds like crazy with some of the stuff I'm saying, but he can handle the ball like a guard. You know, there's not
quite good, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, like Shaq couldn't do what Embiid does. He couldn't dribble like Embiid. He couldn't shoot. If Shaq could have done that, oh my God, like imagine that. But Embiid, just what he does for the Sixers, it's crazy. And Doc just made a huge change with it. And I think it's also having that winning mindset with Doc. I mean, he's been on the Clippers for all these past years, heads over here now, and it's just a winning mindset. Brett Brown didn't have that because you were telling Brett Brown to lose games. I think Brett Brown would be a fantastic assistant coach, or with what he was doing for the Sixers as a rebuilding coach for a young team. But then when the time comes, you need that vet. You need that winning coach. But I think like the transformation for Doc Rivers for Embiid is just fantastic. And it's a great sight to see. I think he's the MVP, but we'll find out and see if that injury ended up hurting him.